Welcome to Wolf Tales, where you'll be hearing stories from our own staff and volunteers here at Wolf Connection. We'll also be speaking with artists, photographers, videographers, and musicians about the way the wolf has influenced their work. Our next guest comes recommended by a former guest who was on the podcast, Brett Oakes, who some of you may remember. He was a hunter who is... it's Oaks. Yeah, I double checked.
Is it?
And so
okay.
I know. I messed up. Brett, I'm sorry if you're listening. I screwed up your last name on the podcast before, so I apologize. But he sent an email introducing Jen GaNun. She is a vocalist, harmonium, and choreography with Lost Walks, which is an interesting band collaboration project, which I will let Jen describe so I don't muck it up. But she has been with them since the inception, so basically for 7 years, since 2014. And I believe, Jen, you're coming to us from Colorado. So first off, how are you doing? And thanks for coming on the podcast with Stephen and myself.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for having me. I am in Denver, Colorado. I'm really grateful to be here.
Yeah, so please go into, because Brett tried to, I guess, encapsulate the experience of what a Lost Walks performance is. And I did some reading up. I looked at some of the work that you all have done, and it's really a different type of experience. So please tell everybody how Lost Walks was started, and then what is the aim of the group when someone goes and sees a performance?
Sure, yeah. So Lost Walks started with an idea that my partner, who's also in the project, and I had in about 2014, where we wanted to create our own music to then create choreography too. And at the time, I was a more active performer and dancer. And I was kind of finding music that I really liked, local bands that I really liked, and setting movement to it for either myself or other dancers. But we wanted to kind of create our own music for that purpose, for movement. And it felt really natural for the two of us to start with a narrative theme. So we started to create a narrative, some loose characters, a loose idea of what the story would be. And we immediately decided to go with an animal theme, namely the wolf. And we started to pull in some other folks who could join the project with us. So Andy and I started the project with the hopes of just creating something original. And then we asked our friend Damien Merkel to join in with us. It started really with just some loose songs and loose narrative. And I think one of the really important points in history for Lost Walks was going to visit a wolf sanctuary down in South Colorado, a little bit past the Springs, where we learned about kind of the history of the wolf in Colorado specifically, and then what was currently happening with them. So I wouldn't say that at the inception of Lost Walks that we had this idea that we were going to be a part of the movement to bring wolves back home to Colorado, but we quickly found ourselves wanting to be in that position after we learned so much about them at the sanctuary.
Yeah, I think, John, that's the sanctuary down this way that you were thinking of visiting. But you're mentioning the word narrative. What is the narrative in summary?
Sure. So Lost Walks has a few different stories. Our first record was called Wolf, Woman, Man. And it was the narrative tale of a couple who moves into the wilderness and then finds themselves in conflict with a lone injured wolf. And that was the idea that we started with. And originally, our wolf character was kind of the evil character in our story. And after we visited the sanctuary, we realized that we didn't want to be a part of kind of reinforcing the big bad wolf story. So we shifted and he became kind of the hero in our story. But basically, the story is in Wolf, Woman, Man, the couple goes to the woods, they interact with this injured wolf. And in the end, after a lot of conflict, the wolf kind of sets the woman free so she can go live her life in peace away from her partner. And what we're working on now is the prequel to that story. So Wolf, Woman, Man was the first record that we produced, and then the first show we produced with dancers. And what we're working on now is called Blood Lantern, and it's the prequel to that story.
Who has actually made that switch from telling this classic, the dangerous big bad wolf villain story to flipping to what's more really a more realistic representation of wolves. And I was curious why, and I know this might be a devil's advocate type of question and maybe hard to answer, but why in the beginning, I think it would be educational to hear why in the beginning, from a storyteller's perspective, did you resort to that initial wolf narrative?
That's a great question. Before we really wanted to be advocates for reintroduction in Colorado, I think the majority of the inspiration was actually based off of movement and sound, like what we wanted to portray, the type of music we wanted to create was dark and rooted and deep, and same thing with the movement. We wanted to be creating movement that felt really rooted to the ground and athletic. And I don't think we had really the idea that the wolf was, no, I think actually we did. We had the idea that the wolf was kind of the villain in the story, but now we've come more to the middle, like the wolf is neither good nor bad. It's just another creature that's trying to survive. And then when we add on the layers of the environment and how it can affect, how a major predator can affect the environment, that's when we start to push the concept of like, we're all a piece of this. We all need to be working together to have a healthy future.
What was the experience like when you guys went to the sanctuary? So how did your perception shift? Because you had the wolf, you said, as the villain first, and then you go to this sanctuary. What was the sanctuary experience like for yourself and the performers and the bandmates who went with you? What did you learn? What were the things that you took away, and how did you incorporate that back into the album and ultimately the performance?
Sure. So when we went to the sanctuary, we were kind of looking for some more lyrical content. We just wanted to learn more about the animal and do it in a fun way. So we went down to Colorado Wolf and Wildlife, and they have a really beautiful educational tour, guided tours that they give everybody that goes. So throughout the tour, you're kind of slowly learning about individual wolves and how they got to the sanctuary, most of which are kind of sad stories about abuse and then finally living in sanctuary. But the thing that really hooked me was they had this corner in their kind of gift shop area that was kind of an education corner. And there was a photo of a wolf that was in a metal trap, one of those old school, really awful traps. And it gave me nightmares. I mean, I left there not knowing about the conflict in Colorado history with the wolf, not knowing about the extermination of the animal. And then we did some more education ourselves and learned a lot more. So I think the shift was this very visceral feeling that we had after seeing this photo. And then, accompanied by all the individual stories that we learned from the tour. Eventually, we did one of the kind of meet and greets with the ambassador wolves, where you get to go into their enclosure and have an actual up close experience with a wolf. And that was definitely a connection point for me too.
We get that a lot here. It sounds like it's similar to what Wolf Connection does. And that's, I feel you, because I I get those experiences a lot when we do tours and we do the educational side as well, where you see people come outside from the outside. They have this certain perception about the wolf or wolf dogs, some of the wolf dogs in our case. And it's really incredible to see the transformation on the human end, whether it's maybe it shifts their mind a little bit. They take a little piece of them, piece of the wolves with them in some way, shape, or form. But was there any sort of, you said that when you went into their enclosure and you were able to actually meet the ambassador wolves, was that a point of connection that you were anticipating or waiting for? Was that something that was sort of sprung to you guys in the moment and you had to sort of prepare on the spot? And then how did that all feel in that moment?
Well, I think one piece of our story is that I identify as an animal advocate, so I already feel like a ton of empathy to animals, and I have strong opinions about how we should treat living beings. And I don't know everything, obviously. I don't know about, a ton about our history and about how we've engaged like the ecosystem of animals and humans before. So I feel like ethically I align with being respectful of all living beings. So maybe I assumed like it'll just deepen that connection a little bit more. And what's been really fascinating about working on this project is we've had the opportunity and the chance to learn from so many other folks. I'm a person that lives in Denver. I live in the city. I am not a biologist. I'm not an ecologist. I'm not a farmer. I don't work in animal ag. I'm just an artist that has opinions on how we should be kind to people and animals. But we've gotten a chance to learn from biologists and ecologists and ranchers that are kind of doing like the groundwork in working in coexistence. So I came in with my own opinions, but they were reinforced by coexistence practices and empathy, I think, for the other side. The other side, I put that in quotes because although I have strong opinions, I don't feel like it's very useful to argue a lot. I feel like if we can all learn to listen a little bit better and hopefully work together better, that there's a more kind of peaceful future ahead of us. So I think maybe that connection with the wolf and then what spiraled after that, which was working with Rocky Mountain Wolf Project and getting more involved in the movement, has taught me a lot about empathy and working together.
Yeah, no, it's such a beautiful way that you put it, because we've been talking about this really since the inception of this podcast, and really the guests that we've been having on more so lately than not really are looking to bridge that gap. And like you said, it's not the other side, like you said in quotations, but really just reaching across and having everyone have their voice really be heard. And it's such a beautiful thing to hear from an artist such as yourself and people from all walks of life, that we're giving each other a chance to express their opinions and express their needs and their wants. And then we can come together more in the center and figure out a way that we can all coexist. And I think that's really the aim as we go down this road with the climate and the environment and ecology and things of that sort. So when what do you feel the role is for Lost Walks? Because you do work with the Rocky Mountain Wolf Project. So initially the group starts. That's not where your guys' aim is. How do you get drawn in? So you go to the conservation center, you come back from that, and then where does that connection with Rocky Mountain Wolf Project come in, and how do you guys get started, and what's that advocacy and for you all as performers like, as you're up there performing but also trying to raise awareness?
Sure. It's evolved a lot since the beginning. We started, once we learned about wolves, and we shifted our story, we decided that at the time, maybe we could be a funding source for the people in the organizations that were doing the groundwork. So the first few shows that we had, which for an artistic group is the majority of how we're making money, we had a table kind of by our merch table. And we just passed out a lot of information about wolves that we gathered from the sanctuaries and biologists through Rocky Mountain Wolf Project. And as we evolved as a project and realized that maybe our gift wouldn't be fundraising because we have a ton of people involved in our project, it's a big lift to get a production going. And maybe we would buy a meal or two for the wolves at a sanctuary if we were giving that money back. But it wouldn't have the impact that we were really hoping to have. So we kind of slowly shifted our focus a bit more on the storytelling and, providing a different way to access information on wolves. So that was when we kind of shifted to, I think our gift as artists is to present a new story. So something that's the opposite of the big bad wolf. And I think that's where we feel good now, is that we're providing education kind of in these little bite-sized moments, either through our narrative, through the lyrical content, or through our programs at shows, or talking in between our songs about the reality of the wolf. So it feels like our role right now, and I hope to continue this in the future, is a bit more education on what the real wolf is like versus what we know in most of our history.
No, I love that. Expand upon too about it seems as though, is there roughly about a dozen or so people in a production when you guys have a concert? It seems that way. I was going through the list of the amount of instruments and choreography and the dancers that are a part of it. So what is a typical experience or a show like with Lost Walks? What are the things that people, if they go, that they're going to see? And again, the interpretations that you guys are putting out there as performers.
Sure. Yeah, we, as a project that's rooted in music, movement, collaboration, and conservation, there's many different variations of our productions. I would say at our core, we're a community of performers. So we're rehearsing pretty much in affinity groups of musicians and dancers. And then for our productions, we come together as one big crew. So we've got 6 musicians and then 5 dancers. And we would like to always create a show environment where all of the performers can be there. That being said, we have had gigs where just the musicians are there, whether it's a space restriction or time restriction. So we do feel confident in just being a band, And then we've had a few gigs where it's just the dancers that are performing as well. But for the most part, our big productions that we put on, we typically try to host them in spaces that would allow for both the musicians and the dancers to be together. And then we usually have some form of visual art, whether that's artwork that's been projected onto paper and then painted, like big panels that we're putting up before the shows, lighting effects. We try to build kind of an environment in any venue where it feels a little bit more fantastical. So in a big production that we put on, and by big, I mean like we're hosting the production, we have the musicians and the dancers that are performing together, and then some artwork that's also involved. We have done collaborations with other folks too. So we've worked, as this is kind of a main goal of the project, is to always work with other artists and other folks that are interested in these themes. We've had tattoo artists create t-shirts for us before. We have had 2 local breweries do a tasting throughout one of our shows. So we connected a beer to every song that we were performing and then passed out little samplers of those beers. And so that's how the collaboration gets really big, where we are working with other community members, whether they're artists themselves or biologists and ecologists, to help us produce a show or produce kind of materials that support the education in the shows.
So are you when the vote went down for the reintroduction of wolves there, did you guys immediately see, how do you see your impact? Because it seems as though you're already doing the community outreach. You're already connecting with other artists. You're connecting with biologists. Do you see this? And I think you mentioned this before, and I'm probably just reiterating, but it's your purpose now to be this bridge as a performing group or performing group to really connect these different sectors of the community and bring them together, which are great ideas, beer sampling and, merchandise and education. And it seems as though you do it seamlessly. Was it always this way? Or is it, like you said, I guess it's still an evolving process as you work on the prequel album to Wolf, Woman, and Man? Is it just an ever evolving process, I guess is my question, or did it kind of start seamlessly when you guys ran it all together?
It feels a bit like we fell into it, honestly. I had no idea that the movement was already happening to bring wolves back to Colorado. And that's, as a person who I've lived here for almost 13 years now, I care about our environment, I care about animals, and I was totally unaware of it. So in the beginning, it definitely felt like we fell into it, and then we're slowly recognizing where we want to live and what we deliver as impact on the movement to bring wolves back. We've done a few different variations. Like I said, our shows can be sometimes these really big productions with every body and every piece that's delivered. Other times they're smaller, they're shorter, they're, instead of like a full rock variation, it's an acoustic variation. And then in between those songs, we're talking about the education piece. So giving a little bit more info on what the Colorado history is and what's happening now and how can community members get involved. And we've also done some really fun things with young folks and students we've done a few kid workshops, and then I think it's a bit more suited for younger adults at the high school, university level, where we were doing workshops on how to use music and dance in a social or environmental movement. So although it wasn't solely based off of here's what's happening with wolves in Colorado, it was kind of more like, how do you create an art piece that matters to you and deliver a message through that? So sometimes it's a bit more obvious and tactile in the way that we're delivering the education, and sometimes it's a bit more roundabout, with kind of sharing our vision, but also hopefully helping other artists do things like this as well.
Folks that are coming to your shows, are they anticipating all of this conservation talk and wolf conversation, or is this something you promote alongside show promotions, or is this just kind of something that you do at your shows? You kind of you spring it on people and hope that it makes an impact, or are people coming to these shows anticipating and expecting this is music and wolf conservation talk?
I'd like to think it's kind of all of the things at once, that, folks who maybe are interested in contemporary modern dance might come to our show and not know they're about to hear some wolf info. folks who are just interested in rock operas might come to the show and not know they're going to get some dance tonight. I think we've been a bit more intentional with the connection between all the pieces, but we really try to kind of offer like different access points. So if people are interested in only this or that, they can do it that way. If they want to read more into the story and they want to understand the fantastical piece of it a bit more, that we offer that without being totally clear that that is how we want people to engage with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And when you're saying that when you are partnering or working with biologists, how are they included in the show? Are they doing talks?
Yeah, so they have. I forgot to mention earlier that the part of the thing that we kind of fell into was around the ballot initiative. That was what we were all completely unaware of that happening in the very beginning. So we started to join in on getting signatures to get the thing on the ballot. And we did a Colorado tour, really just focused in Colorado, so we could share a bit of the education and then get people to sign our signature pages for the ballot initiative. And then right before people were voting last November, we did a live stream where we did our kind of educational set and talked about this is the history in Colorado, this is what's happening moving forward, here's how you can be a part of it. And we have had biologists come and talk either before our sets. Brett was actually a person, not as a biologist, but as a person who was a part of the movement. He came and helped represent Rocky Mountain Wolf Project and talked a bit before one of our shows. And then we've had biologists and ecologists kind of work alongside us in the way that they give us some information to kind of work with either in movement, in the lyrics, or in our education. So through Rocky Mountain Wolf Project, I'll put out a call like, hey, we need some information on wolf families, or we need some information about how they mourn and how do they work together. And I give them some themes, and then we've had volunteers offer to provide that information for us. And then that either makes its way into the education piece, which is our website or our talks in between the songs, stuff that we have at our merch table. And then it makes its way into our lyrics and our movement as well.
That's very cool. And you mentioned the history of wolves in Colorado a few times. So it just leads me to believe that there's something about that history that resonates with you. What are some of those things maybe?
I think, the piece about wolves and other predators kind of being in the way of what we see as progress, like human progress in the West. And that resonates with me because I think if we're, honoring how folks lived in this land before and still do, before colonizers came here, there was more harmony, and we know that we can coexist. So that resonates with me because, well, first of all, I was unaware of that history. I didn't know that wolves were hunted out and were basically removed from Colorado by humans. And then the way it was done was, again, really heart-wrenching to me. It really hooks me when I hear about that type of horror against animals. So that was one thing that really mattered to us, was to kind of share, like, this is where we're coming from. And now, we intervened with the natural way, and now we have a choice to kind of right the wrong with a little bit of reintroduction.
No, it's amazing because it seems as though you and the band has really almost intervened in a different way, that you're connecting all these different dots. And I think it's rare for this. We've seen music and dance and things like that have cultural impacts before, but I think on such a sensitive topic like this, with wolves, this type of predator, reintroduction into a state that hasn't had wolves for quite some time. It almost seems it's so seamless in a way that you guys, like you said, you just really fell into this spot that was sort of missing one last little thing. And the Lost Walks is that piece of that puzzle that can reach all these different aspects that are in and around, the main population centers of Denver and the big cities. But also you talked about that you guys are talking with ranchers and you're talking with hunters who hunt ethically, that, Brett being one of them. And I'm sure there are others that come to shows like yours. And so it's just a great reach out, and it's a great combination of folks that are getting behind all of this reintroduction talk and policy and making positive change, which I think is fantastic. What's the process for you guys moving forward with the prequel album? And now that the prop has passed and wolves are going to be reintroduced, how do you see the future, and how is that album going to tie in with the reintroduction moving forward? Do you guys have that planned out? Are you still talking and working through lyrics and things like that? Where is the process at the moment for you all?
Yeah, great question. We've decided to be a bit more intentional with connecting all those pieces. We really do want people to receive that education piece. So, currently we're slowly releasing our record through an art magazine in Denver. And then that is leading folks hopefully to our website for just the new record called Blood Lantern. And it's being released in 4 different sessions. The first one has already been released. Every month we'll do the rest. And on the website, we have our lyrics, and then highlighted in bold are some of the lyrics that are connected specifically to science about wolves. And I think and then we've got some really beautiful icons and photos that kind of help support some of the story and the science behind it. One of our biggest goals is to, like I said, provide another story about the wolf, because it seems to me that fear and misinformation is, a big part of our issue with many things in the world, but specifically with wolf reintroduction. It's really easy to go quickly to fear and react to that, rather than finding kind of an empathy point and learning more. So our hope is to, be a part of that scene where we're providing a different story outside of fear and misinformation.
With the workshops that you do, because I saw that also with on the site. How do you integrate any of that stuff into those younger groups and those workshops, or is it strictly? I know you said before, you do tie in the music. Now that I'm remembering, the musical time, the musical aspect or the dance aspect with an issue that you want to promote. Is that something that you all go in saying this is what the workshop is about, or is it strictly a musical dance workshop that eventually those topics come up in? How do you guys gauge the interest in that way?
Yeah, they're a bit more the wolf specific information is a bit more secondary, where it maybe feels supplemental, like here's the thing that we care about as artists, so this is how we then include that in the themes when we're creating either the music, the lyrics, or the movement. So I think it's a bit more supportive in the art and then inclusive of the thing that you care about. So we're spouting off some facts, and we're talking about some of the emotionality of our pieces, but we're more or less talking about kind of the creation part of it. And then for the kids specifically, in those we did a bit more of kind of basic concepts around music and dance and how to, work with those basic concepts in a story. So we did like a lesson plan basically on levels in movement and how different animals move. And then how to tell a story with your movement, and we added music to it.
What is that like for you personally? Because I know you've been dancing for such a long time. I know you graduated from Springfield College and you did rehabilitation and disability studies in dance. So how do you incorporate all those things that you learned academically and through your dancing career into all the things you're doing now? Do you feel like you're accessing all the information that you've gathered over the course of your lifetime, that you're in the perfect, like you're in the pocket right now where you see yourself, just accessing everything and giving out all that you can? Or do you still think there's more that you're learning every day?
Oh, for sure. I'm always learning something new every single day. And I think the big gift with Lost Walks is because it's a collaboration. We have so many different people with gifts that are coming in with ideas and ways to kind of meet the larger vision. Lost Walks is definitely a project based off of all of the loves in my life. I love movement. I love music. I love animals. So it definitely is something that kind of marries all the things that I really like. But what's also been really exciting about it is that we've surrounded ourselves with folks who make the project actually possible. Because although I have a vision, like a big vision for the project, all the people that are involved in it, dancers, musicians, artists, the people who support us and giving us space to practice, and all of those pieces, the project would not happen without them. So I provide my gifts, which are the things that I really care about. And the things that I've learned through school and through dancing with other companies and from other folks that I admire. But everybody else also plugs in those gifts too. And that's really what makes it all happen.
Yeah, it really seems like you are a pack. You're a wolf pack in this situation. You all bring your unique talents, you prop each other up, and you feed off of each other, and have grown into this beautifully collaborative group and situation. And just again, I can't emphasize this enough as we continue to talk, that you are all dropped into this situation that where you're needed, and where it's such a different approach, that instead of it's just throwing information and science and education at individuals, or it's just throwing hate or visceral reactions, it's collaborative and movement and music. And I really think that can bridge a lot of gaps, and it's done that through our society for the better part of however many decades. And I think you guys are dropped into the perfect situation here, especially in Colorado, especially with this reintroduction that's happening less than 2 years now.
You ever have any people coming into your performances that are have pulled you aside after a show or something and outwardly are not a fan of the information you're sharing?
No. Like we've had conversations with people that felt like I would say we've had conversations with people where they weren't totally aligned with reintroduction, but we've never experienced any type of real conflict. I've personally prepared myself for that because I have to. I feel like I have to prep for things like that, but we've not really experienced it. And my hope is that hopefully because we maybe seem accessible, I'm hoping that people would know we are here for the conversation. It's part of why we're doing this, is to just offer it up in a different way through art. I think I know we've had one story, at least when we didn't get booked for a conference around dance because of our underlined theme. Um, and that was okay with me.
No, I love that. You guys are sticking with your convictions, and that's, and again, I think with Stephen, that's a great question, Stephen. I couldn't think of that, but it's great that you're open and you're accessible, and I think that's huge. And we've talked about that a lot, is just being accessible and letting people share their concerns and share what they know, and maybe they don't know all the information. I think that's what's missing in a lot of things, as you said earlier, throughout our society at the moment. In terms of the pandemic and coming out of that, I'm not really up to speed on how Colorado's doing in terms of performancing. Has that affected you all in a serious way to continue to get your message out? I know you did some live streaming. What's the future look like in terms of actually performing in person with crowds and being able to physically meet these people and physically be accessible, as opposed to going through the computer and live streaming a lot of your work?
Yeah, we've definitely been affected by it, like every other performing group. We had gigs that were canceled in the very beginning, and then we've kind of put a halt on booking those things. We because we were getting ready to play this new record, we had a really unique situation where we were recording it during the pandemic. So it was a slow process for tracking and for actually getting the whole record done. And then we were put into the process of actually learning to play the record together. Once we felt like it was safe to gather as a small group, we started actually practicing again as musicians and dancers. So we're still in the process of solidifying the record and the dancing. Not the record. The record is done, but the actual performing of the record. We do have a weekend held in January in Denver that we're crossing our fingers that we'll be able to actually perform. But, as we all know now, we have to always remain flexible and shift with whatever times we're living in. And we still want to be a part of the scene, even if we can't perform as much as we want to. We wish we could be performing a lot more. I would do this show every night if we could, because it's the fun of it, and it's really, like I've already shared, it's a lot of the things that I really love, and the performance piece is really self-serving too. It feels really good, and then it feels really great to connect with other people who care about it. And I think some of the gift is that we are trying to reach communities that aren't always specifically targeted around this type of information. Like a long time ago, I was a part of an organization that did bone marrow drives and at shows. And at first they were doing really big venues like Red Rocks. And I kind of got them started in doing outreach and signups for bone marrow donation at some of our local like rock venues, that maybe people would ignore that crowd if they weren't there at like a loud hardcore or metal show or whatever. And I think some of what our goal too is to reach the people who just want to go out and access, some loud music, or if it's the acoustic version, some interesting music and interesting movement, and also tag along the education piece. So we would really love to be doing that more. And for right now, we only have January booked.
But you are, so explain more though about, because you said you already released the first quarter of, I guess, the first act, or however you want to put it, of the record. So tell everybody then, what's the plan? Where can they go then for Blood Lantern as it continues to release? And what can they, I don't know if we really touched on, I know it's the prequel, but what can they expect from Blood Lantern if they've already listened to Wolf, Woman, and Man, or they haven't listened to Wolf, Woman, and Man? Should they listen to that first? Should they listen to Blood Lantern? And then like kind of give people an idea of how it's going to be released, where they can go to find that, and then what's the process while listening to the records?
Yeah, sure. So where you can go is bloodlantern.com. And there's a homepage where there's 4 different sections. The first and the second will be released soon. So you click on that, and then you'll be taken to a different page where you can access the songs as well as the lyrics and then some of the Wolf information. And then you can go back and do all 4 eventually. By the end of December, all 4 bits will be released. That's the only place right now where you can access the songs and the Wolf information. By the end of December, we'll have the record up on all the other streaming sites like Spotify and iTunes. And we're hoping to make a bit of a dance video so we can include some of the movement in this release as well. And then in regards to your question about like how people should do it, if they should listen to Wolf Woman Man first or not, it doesn't matter. I think if it's kind of like Star Wars in the way that like you might like the older stuff more than the newer stuff, and however you want to engage with it, we want you to. So, but what you can expect from the story is that Wolf Woman Man is about this lone wolf who's engaging with a couple. And Blood Lantern is the story about how that wolf became a lone wolf. So he used to have a pack. And the story goes on throughout the record on how he lost all of his pack mates.
That's some powerful stuff. That is absolutely powerful. Let me just ask, I have a couple more things. So where can they go? Where can anyone go can they ever reach out to yourself and the band if they have any questions about performances, about information? Where's the place, and on social media, where can they find you guys and connect and start a conversation if they're interested in the work that you all do?
Yeah, sure. We're always open to the idea of new collaboration or, like I said, performing more. So folks can reach out to us at lostwalksband@gmail.com. You can access our website at lostwalksband.com. And then we've got our YouTube video of the acoustic education version of the show that we did last November.
And then what about for workshops? That's also at lostwalksband.com. Is there a section where if people want to sign up for workshops, I don't know if that's happening yet, but still they can get a gauge of if that's something they want to get involved with?
Yeah, folks would just reach out to us via email. So we could talk about either doing workshops or shows. Mm-hmm.
Terrific. So as of right now, this is great. I have my last question for you, Jen, before, I don't know if Steven has anything come up in a minute, but you're all good. So my last question for you is, when you hear the word wolf, what is the thing that comes to your mind?
Misunderstood. That's probably one thing that first comes to mind. Powerful, impactful. I'm just giving you one-word answers. Is that what you wanted?
That's fine. That's great. No, it's fine.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I would say when I think of the word wolf, I think misunderstood, impactful, and powerful.
I'm honored to have you on to represent the band, and again, I thank Brett for connecting all of us and having this conversation. I really think it's a beautiful project that you're all doing. I commend you all for tying everything together and really being a force to be reckoned with on this reintroduction, and in a positive way. And I think that's something that is missing. And we will promote all the websites. We'll have everything in our description so people can go listen to the first part of the first couple parts of Blood Lantern, and then find Wolf Woman Man and give that a listen. So, Jen GaNun, pleasure to meet you, and just best of luck moving forward. And I can't wait to listen to the prequel, and hopefully we can get you guys out here at Wolf Connection at some point and you guys can do a performance in the wide open space where there's no restrictions, hopefully at some point.
Ooh, that would be so awesome. We would love that.
Absolutely. How's to all of you out there, and Stephen and I will be with you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Looking to support Wolf Connection or sponsor one of the wolves in our pack? Just go to wolfconnection.org, click on the donate tab, and find out more information.